Break in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a glorious Friday afternoon. We're about to get a major thunderstorm here in New Hampshire. So if you hear thunder and see lightning, it's probably just Jesse's head exploding. So, right. So, how is everybody? How's your week, Jesse? How's your week been?
My week has been great. I wanted to get the pastor rotated over lunch today, and I got that done and got back in the seat 10 minutes ahead of time for the webinar here. So I am flying high. I've got all my checklists done for the day.
Nice. And Mr. Schnurr, Team Tim, Team 2, Tim team. We have to come up with other names.
Yeah, I think it's sticking, so we're just going with it, right, Tim?
All right.
Week up in Canada, my new company Cavello, also a Canadian company like ScalePad. So I was up in Waterloo, which is like, I guess it's north of Toronto or somewhere on the side. But yeah, it was fun. The weather's great up there, not too hot, nice and sunny, great team. So, just getting my feet underneath me and pumped for this call on Friday. Wrap it up.
And Alex, I see it now says ScalePad next to your name. Is this now like, and did I see a new logo on your LinkedIn the other day?
There's new logos. There's all kinds of fun stuff because we have a whole marketing team now. I've been getting none of the things done on my checklist this week because I've been off all week packing my house and getting ready to move to Tampa. So
nice. Yeah, that's pretty exciting. Congrats, by the way, on the new home down in Tampa. We'll miss you in the Northeast, but is Tampa?
I won't miss the Northeast though. That's
Is Tampa like the new Silicon Valley? I don't remember who I was talking to the other day, but it seems like every cybersecurity company or whatever is in Tampa.
Somebody told me it's the Austin of Florida, right? It's not Silicon Valley, but it's definitely that startup vibe. And we owe a lot of that to ConnectWise. They built a real big ecosystem down there, and a lot of folks have peeled off from there and started their own ventures and done their own things. But yeah, it seems to be where the industry startups kind of coalesce.
Nice. And so by way of introduction, hold on, let me do this over here. Let me do that over here. Since Jesse read it last time, I'm going to put it on Mr. Tim this time. Our mission goals and objectives.
What if I don't read it, Tim? I'll give you kind of a high level, right? Shift left, like we're proactive cybersecurity. We're out there really trying to be brand agnostic, just talking about helping our fellow partners in the channel, MSPs. What are some of the things a couple key takeaways every week that they can go home with and work on, and reach out if you want to join us on this call. We love having guests, and super excited this week to have Mr. Alex Farling. So.
Yeah, and without further ado, Alex, why don't you take a few minutes, tell us about your journey, tell us about you, and tell us about what you got going on.
Yeah, it's been a hell of a journey. So Alex Farling, I was an MSP for about 16 and a half years, just like hopefully lots of the folks listening here today. But my journey kind of took a different direction as I started trying to solve for some of the problems that my account management and client-facing team, the non-technical part of my business, was facing. And to solve some of those problems, we built a product called Lifecycle Insights. We had an impressive 3.5-year run before we were acquired by ScalePad at the beginning of the year. So good things, crazy things, all things going well and in the right direction.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. Yeah, it's been fun to kind of watch you guys along the way. I was saying to one of my MSP friends earlier today, I think I've been with Lifecycle since they've first been around, right? I was trying to and I was like, yeah, it's probably been like 8 or 9 years I've been on their platform. And then you just said 3, and I'm like, oh, wait, I think I might have fibbed a little.
Yeah, we launched at IT Nation 2019 with 4 beta partners. and we got one of those little cocktail stands in the back corner, and got to hang out there for the first year, and it's been just a wild ride since then. Figuring out how to grow and mature a business through COVID.
Yeah, and it was, it's for us as an MSP, it's been a great platform for what we use it for, assessments and QBRs and all kind of fun stuff. But we don't talk about products, although we do sometimes. It's okay. So, Jesse, give us your quick little intro, please, my friend.
Yeah. So Jesse Miller, Power PSA. Like Alex, was with an MSP for a long time. First as director of infrastructure. Building out multiple services, hosted products, and then about 6 years ago was named the CISO and built out one of what I feel like was one of the first true blue MSP security programs in the industry back in 2015 or 2016, and
nice.
Grew that to a successful business, and we were acquired last year. And after that, branched out on my own with all my playbooks to start showing other MSPs how to do that. And that's what Power PSA Consulting is all about.
Awesome. I love the name too, Power PSA, right? So,
this is your side hustle, right? You're a full-time farmer, So.
Yeah, well, I should mention that, this is the side hustle in a way, right? So,
nice. What was the thing that, like, the chute that you put the cows in and their head, like something you put on LinkedIn the other day that was like, oh my gosh,
well, so that came to fruition this morning. So you want to talk about fires? I looked out the window this morning, and our cow, who we're breeding, was standing to be mounted, meaning she's in heat. So you got about 12 hours. So called up the farmer behind me, who said he would help me. We got her loaded into the chute, and she did not like it. Let me tell you, you don't need coffee when an 1,100-pound animal is going buck wild in the chute. That gets the adrenaline up, man. So anyways, we got it done. She's bred now, and hopefully we'll know in about a month if she's pregnant or not. So that was exciting morning. And then get the pasture rotated this afternoon over lunch in between calls.
So I don't know if I ever told you this, but I raised cows growing up in our little.
You did?
Yeah, we had 3 of them. Let's see. I forget their names. Anyways, I remember Toby, that was the one. And I only remember his name because he was mean. And one day, like, I'm out there, and you're in middle school, you're mucking the stalls at 4 or 5 in the morning, and then you like get a shower quick to go to school, and you still smell like cow crap, right? And so, there was a little bit of like picking on, and a little bit of bullying because I smelled like cow dung all the time.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, they made the best darn steaks.
They do. Indeed, they do.
So, and then Mr. Tim Schnurr, how's the Cavello days? Welcome to Cavello.
Yeah, no, it's been great. 3 weeks in now. It's a really great team. They had a previous success selling a network vulnerability scanner to Arctic Wolf. So it always helps when you try to go to start another company if you've got success to your name. So Alex is officially in that club down there now as well. So,
nice.
But it's been great. We're fairly new to the channel. We were at IT Nation Connect last year. We'll be there this year. A couple other events, but really just trying to ramp up. Hopefully raise some more money. And nice. I think we're in product market fit, but we're still there's other use cases for what kind of we have under the hood. I think it's very new to the channel, data discovery, looking through your files, identifying things like that. So, but let's stop on the product talk. We're here to talk about.
I was about to mute you. No,
Alex, right? Yeah. So,
and you all know me.
Alex has been an incredible mentor to us. So I think most of our listeners probably know Alex, but he's always been incredibly helpful, not only to MSPs, but other vendors in the space. So thank you, Alex.
It's funny because you say that you call me a mentor and I just don't see it. I still feel like all I do is lean on the other vendors in the space to learn from them. So, glad I could help. I'm not sure when that happened, but awesome.
Well, I still have you to thank. still have you to thank or blame for where we are. So Tim Golden, founder of Compliance Risk, rolled out Polygon, our governance as a platform, governance as a service. We got the gas. Like, I owe a lot of that to you, Alex. Like, your words ring true on almost every one of my sales calls with, hey, our friend, our colleague, Alex Farling said, dude, you should sassify that. Okay. And I'm going to like hang on that word forever. Dude, you should satisfy that. And here we are. So, but that's not why we're here to talk today. We're here to talk about why your old risk assessments suck, right? And how to make them better, right? And like how to sell them. And so, Alex kind of had some thoughts around this a little bit. You kind of want to talk a little bit about like, what is the importance of a risk assessment, Alex?
Well, I think there's a few things that make it super important and just a mandate for what MSPs do today. For starters, unless you've done the assessment, you haven't established a status quo and you don't know where you're at today, right? Where the gaps are, where the exposure is, what are the things that need your focus. You can't even begin to put that together until you've gone around and asked yourself, what do I own? Who and what am I trying to protect? Where does my data live? How do I ring the cash register? How do all of these things play into, modern day risk? And modern day risk is so different from what it was in 2008 or 2018. When we evolved from just a firewall and an antivirus, or even into next gen, managed endpoint products and things like that. We really have grown into a world where it requires an entire solution. And even those who are pretty far through the journey still have some risk and exposure. We have to identify that in a risk assessment, and then we have to present it back to our client, basically to hand the risk that we are the only one who knows about back to the person who controls the purse strings and can do something about it.
Interesting. Yeah. So at least in my head, like, you don't know what you don't know, right? Like, I go to my doctor, the first thing he's going to do is run some tests. He's going to do some analysis. He's going to figure out like what's broken. He's going to do an x-ray. He's going to do a thing, right? And so the same mentality when it comes to us as IT professionals working with our clients, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Two questions up front. Like, so are we talking about risk assessments with a brand new client or a current customer? Does it differ? And then you talked about bringing those risks to the business owner, and they're usually not technical, right, Alex? So how do you kind of navigate that as well?
Yeah, I think you get two things there. Number one, it doesn't matter whether it's a new customer or an existing customer. This is a iterative journey. So when we resolve one risk, then all the other risks don't just go away. In fact, they kind of elevate themselves. You patch one way to get attacked by a bad guy, and you wind up with three other things exposed. So as we continue this, it's a cyclical process, right? We fix the worst things, we go reiterate, go look at it all again, and come back and see what the next thing is that we need to be planning. Security, we say this all the time, security is not a state of being. It's not a thing you can go buy off the shelf. It's a process, it's a lifestyle. And so part of the lifestyle is continuous risk assessment, continuous risk monitoring to make sure that we know where our problems are and where our concerns are. You had another question there and I don't even remember it already. Oh,
yeah,
the business.
Yeah. Non-technical, so like I think we jumped in right away. We're talking about kind of like firewalls and things like that. But a lot of the risk assessment, or if you think like, we haven't gotten into a framework, so I don't want to jump ahead too far, but a lot of that stuff's pretty technical, right? So
yeah, but it's technical in the what's broken, but it's not technical in the how does it impact my business, right? Okay. If this thing can cause me to leak data, then it's easy for me to sit down with a customer and say, hey, we have 200,000 records, and the average data breach costs this many dollars per record for an organization your size. This is what that would look like to your business. I can put a number on it. Downtime, inability to ring the cash register, all those kind of things, they're not technical. And as nerds, we need to bring them down to the business level and make sure that we talk about them to that level with a C-level executive. But while they may quite often be very, very technical things, we need to reduce it to that end business outcome that we're trying to protect or avoid bringing down.
Nice.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, Alex, you talked about risk assessment as a flight plan. And I love that analogy. talk a little bit more about the continuous approach. So risk assessment is a flight plan. The way I've said it is the continuous monitoring and iteration of that is air traffic control, right? And kind of get into that a little bit for our audience that are maybe getting started in their journey.
Well, let's take an example of just a product that we might look at and perform a simple risk assessment on. The first time I look at a customer from a prospecting perspective, I might be looking at where does their email live. And from a 10,000 foot view with a prospect, I might go out to MX Toolbox and throw in their domain and see SPF and DKIM are configured correctly.
Right.
I might get a cursory glance at some security roles and see that everybody has admin rights, and maybe I can identify something like that. But quite often with a prospect, I don't get too much visibility.
Right.
So I can show them the things that are broke, and I can check a checkbox for me that says they're in Microsoft 365, which means I know I can fix whatever's broke.
Right. Another good.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say another good pre-check, like MX Toolbox is a good pre-check. Have I been pwned is a good pre-check, right?
Yeah.
The leaked passwords have, that kind of stuff. There's a couple of, free tools, free things that we can do as MSPs. Like once we get the prospect, we know their domain, we can kind of poke around and have some of those free tools to check.
It doesn't have to be complicated, right? I used to pull up MX Toolbox while I had a prospect on the phone, right? Somebody would call my office and go, hey, I'm inquiring about IT support, and I'd figure out who they work for, and I'd pull up MX Toolbox, and I'd tell them, I see you're hosted in Microsoft 365, and their minds just blown, right? But then we can start to have that conversation with, are you using MFA to log in? What are the things are you doing? What does this look like? What does your experience look like? And I'm establishing myself as an expert because I'm telling them things that from the outside they don't think I should know. And then I'm able to explain to them how and why things are able to be different. But I'm talking about it all from a business impact perspective. And it's, Mr. Customer, I don't plan to move your email, but there are some things we can do to make email more deliverable, to make sure that the email that gets to you is more secure, to make sure that we can protect your accounts and keep them from getting breached. And this is an iterative approach because on day one, I might just fix SPF and DKIM. But on day 365, I'm putting banners all over their email and I'm checking all the other security boxes. But to Jesse's point, I can't do all that on day one. If I blocked zip attachment, turned on MFA, threw banners all over their email, and went through and secured everything, the customer wouldn't be able to log in. I'd interrupt their business. They would have a real business delivery issue.
Right.
So what we recommend is go in and find the worst problems, fix the worst of the worst, right? Make sure all of your admins have MFA, reduce the number of admins, just check some of the security boxes, go back to the customer and check back in.
Yeah.
How's it going? Did we survive that okay? We got to make a couple more changes to continue to lock this down. What does that business impact look like? How do we spread the word to your people that it's coming? Yeah. These are the things we can do to make sure that security doesn't get in the way of how they run the business.
Yeah. I think that's a great
turning that dial, right? We've had a couple episodes, right? You kind of lay it out, and depending on what the service, sometimes it's not fully on, right? Like it could be, depending if it's like an MDR tool or a application whitelisting or something like that, you just kind of slowly give it a little juice, right?
Very few of our tools are black and white, on and off.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of dials and adjustments to be made.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's that's exactly right. And I think just to add kind of a rider onto that is where MSPs can get bogged down in that process that I've seen is not providing actionable steps. So like you said, you went and you found all these things wrong, and you're like, oh, now bye. Right. So
right. And instead the conversation is more about, hey, we're going to make iterative changes over time. We're going to fix things as we go. And that this is going to be a forever conversation. And there's even going to come a point where you come to the customer and say, all right, we fixed 27 things. Let's look at the 28th. And they go, whoa. That looks like a $500 fix for a $50 problem. Are we done? Right. And there's a point at which they have the business conversation that says the risk is not worth the investment and it's time to stop.
Well, I think you should.
We're so much like my way or the highway. We have to realize that, there are certain things that are the floor. They're the minimums. They're the you have tos.
Yeah.
But there are places where we're going to get up against a customer, and the customer's going to go, look, I've done everything you told me to do to this point, but uncle, I quit. Like, this is enough. And I think you have to be aware of that.
And I think so. That's a perfect point. And I think to get out ahead of that, I think you should help them make those decisions. So you should say, and one part of my risk assessment process that I use is, hey, we're going to show you all the things that you could do to get your score super low. And then we're going to show you the things that we don't think you should do or don't make sense for you currently, right? And then immediately you're positioning yourself as making those business decisions for the client or helping them make those business decisions. And you're saying, hey, we just don't want to throw everything at you. We want you to do the things that make the most sense for your business based on your custom level of risk.
And to support that, I saw a conversation on Facebook yesterday or the day before where someone was talking about giving a VCIO a quota. Right. And saying that account managers, a lot of MSPs call this a VCIO, and my head just blew up. Right. And I went, this isn't a thing. This can't be a thing. If we have a VCIO who carries a quota, that is a salesperson. That is not a VCIO.
Right. That's right.
And the CIO has to be able to go in and say, does the business case make sense for the solution, or does the solution make sense for the business case? This is a risk reward analysis. Where a salesperson certainly goes in and says, hey, it's my job to sell you everything in my line card and get you to allow us to go wide and deep into your organization and sell you all of the things. Right. So it's really, and I love what Peter's saying here, risk to revenue translation. This is exactly what happens at the CIO level. And this is why it's so hard for a small MSP to get VCIO right. Because they don't have enough people to say, here's my dedicated account manager, here's my dedicated hunter farmer, here's my dedicated CIO. Right. You have to wear all those hats in a really small organization. You really have to struggle to figure out at what point do I have my salesman's hat on, and at what point do I have my CIO hat on, where I'm operating as a C-level executive, helping my customer manage their budget and address risk in their organization.
Yeah, we see a lot of the industry starting to shift from being, binary ones and zeros, pushing buttons, to being true business partners, right? Being that expert in the fields, right? So even in my business, I hire a lawyer, I hire an accountant, I bring in the right people who are the experts in those fields. And they're not talking to me about ones and zeros in QuickBooks. They're talking to me about the business risk. And us as IT professionals, most of us are engineers getting into an MSP, right? And so, I think
you're even skipping ahead, Tim. Risk overall, you don't hear that a lot in the MSP space, right? Traditionally, as you said, ones and zeros, setting up my technical infrastructure, right? But having those conversations. Here comes that broken record, Jesse, right? Talking about, hey, asking probing questions and getting very good answers and understanding their business, right? What are the business flows? What are the data flows? Who are the people in charge? Who's empowered, right, to kind of do the things you want to do, or who's right, who's pulling the purse strings that I think Alex mentioned earlier. So,
and one of my favorites, what happens to your organization? What does your day-to-day look like if that system over there that rings the cash register were not available?
Right.
Oh yeah.
Whether it be breached or flooded or blown away in the wind, it doesn't matter. If it was unavailable, what does that look like to your day?
Oh, I love that.
Just shut up.
7 days, a month. What does it look like? Yeah.
I love the idea, and I think this is super powerful as a crown jewels. That's something you can do quickly to get started as you bring a client on, as a crown jewels assessment. Yes, you do that initial risk and you kind of have your footing, but sitting down with the client early on and saying, hey, what are your critical line of business systems? And like you said, Alex, what does it look like if those aren't available for 8 hours, 12 hours, 7 days? What does that look like? And then we need to start thinking that way. And at least that gets their business, that kind of helps direct their business sense towards what a cyber incident would look like.
And this is a little mini business impact analysis, which is really just another way to assess risk.
Right. Absolutely. There's something you touched on earlier, saying, that with your conversation on Facebook, I want to dig in and maybe give MSPs some landmines to avoid. What are some mistakes you've seen made, or some things you've seen done wrong that can really handicap the program for MSPs as they get started doing this?
Yeah. I want to say you used the phrase crown jewels, and I love that. The VCIO is one of the crown jewels in the MSP.
Yeah.
Right? All too often we try and lump it in and layer it on top of the services we've already sold to our customer. And we need to be really careful with that. One of the mistakes that I see is that an MSP says, hey, I already sold all my customers at $71 a seat, and now I have to do this security thing. I'm just going to give them VCIO services on top of it. And that is so scary. Number one, most of our VCIOs don't do a good job tracking their time, so we don't know how much time they put into every account. We must know how much time they put into every account. They're some of the most expensive people in your organization.
Yes.
If you have real CIOs, if you're not just using calling them CIOs. So they have to track their time. The time has to go against the agreement. We have to see where they make an agreement profitable or not profitable. And in most cases, if you're working in a regulated industry, CIO services have to be scoped separately, sold by the hour, and be a billable, an actual resource that we track. And our CIOs, the only quota they carry should be number of client-facing billable hours.
That's right.
Because they literally need to be a billable resource. And somebody said something to me a long time ago that just stuck. Like if I have a CIO that's attached to Cavello and his job is to go out to Tim and work with Tim, and he gets a month where, hey, they bought 20 hours, but he's only put in 12.
Right.
What is my CIO to do with those extra 8 hours? Well, he's to go out to the business, meet with the actual people who deliver the product or service, learn what they do and help them automate, help them streamline, help them continue to improve workflows. That's where a CIO adds value. Exactly. And if I'm doing this on a just layered on top of my contract approach, they're never going to get that kind of time and attention. It's always going to be just, this guy is only here to deliver a QBR, scare the crap out of him with a risk assessment, and try and get him to spend money.
Yeah,
and that's not what this role is about.
Yeah, and I think that's an industry-wide problem, right? Because we're still battling what is an MSP versus an MSSP versus an MSIT.
Well, everything has to be flat rate, and pardon my French, I'm sure this is a family show, but this is bullshit.
Yeah.
Yes.
A 5-person organization doesn't pay you enough to help them get CMMC compliant.
No,
they just don't, right? They need to write a big fat check for that. There's no way you can't do that. You can do that without losing money if you're just layering this on top of a flat rate service.
Exactly. And so, when we under our MSP, yes, like here's the services that are like monthly, whatever, $200 a month, the stack, the whatever. But our vCISO services are contracted differently with a different MSA, different KPIs, different goals, mission goals and objectives, different MGO. Like it is a completely separate service. And I the fear, and actually what I think I'm seeing is, those lesser established MSPs, how do I add $500 per client per month to my stack? I throw the word vCISO or fractional CISO or fractional SIO, fractional some big word, marketing slop in front of my client and say, we're going to do vCISO services. But what that really means is I'm going to do a QBR. I might do some phishing testing, and maybe I write a policy. I don't know. Maybe I download a free template someplace for them. I don't know. Yeah. And that's
we're calling that a CIO, and that's where I get really wrapped up in this industry. I get really wound around the axle because CIO is more than just account management with a risk assessment, and I think a lot of us have tried to turn it into that.
I think it's interesting you said on the billable hours. I think it clearly gets that relationship to understand that the clock's running, like as those people engage with the client. So that I think that's great. I think
and it gives us a metric and a KPI for them, right? Utilization is their metric.
Yeah.
An engineer.
I know.
We bill it on FTE, full-time equivalent. We design the program as an FTE. And then there's KPI, FTE, full-time equivalent, or the number of hours a human can work in a given week, right? For those that don't know what that means. We, 20%, 30%, whatever the percentage is, that's how we bill it. That's how we structure it. And then we have deliverables. And the first 90 days is, let's define what those deliverables are so that we can continue to monitor and maintain and achieve them and iterate through them.
Yeah.
Tim, do you want to talk about the different, clearly a vCISO is very different than a vCIO, right? So is that something, I don't know, Alex or Tim?
We could probably spend weeks upon that.
Well, I'm asking for my own edification, right? Because like I've seen the tools out there, and Alex offers a great one, but vCISO, I've got a lot of experience there. So does Jesse, right? Like some of these bigger, more mature MSPs do actually offer kind of like per seat managed security services that aren't billables. And I certainly have been in a in a Fortune 500 one where they charge by either data input ingest, right? Like it's crazy. Like we're monitoring your data petabytes or whatever, but they clearly do have those metrics, right? So they're still brought in line, or there are rails in terms of performance. Some of them are like on the VC side, on the proactive side, and the shifting left side, right, Tim? Like you could do a control a week or something like that, or a control every 2 weeks, or I don't know, some kind of cadence, right, or some kind of burn down of a framework or something like that. But I'm just really interested in that, and as you said, in that VC, what are those other goals besides time or hours? Like what are some of the metrics? And we don't have Kyle Christensen on, and I know he's the metric champion.
You'll have to bring him to talk through the KPIs. That's his,
what are some of those KPIs, I guess, Alex, like in terms of what are, besides time, like what are the goals that they're trying to achieve?
I think a lot of these are going to be client specific, right? Because we're going to want to align these goals with the client's goals.
Yes.
So if the customer's goal is to become CIS IG1 compliant or make it through ISO 27001 or whatever, we're going to need percentage goals against that customer's business goal. And if their goal is to do XYZ in a year, then we have to do 10% a month, give or take 8% a month, whatever, to be able to march that client forward. So there's going to be some outcome-based goals based on where the customer is going. And those are going to differ for every single client, which is why, just another reason, this can't just be a generic, like, hey, $20 a seat, $50 a seat, $200 a seat, whatever. Every client's headed in a different place at a different pace. And we've got to make sure that this service is flexible enough to help them get there.
Yeah. What I've seen work well. Oh, go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
No, I was just going to banter and say you just said my favorite word, the F word, which is flexible.
I think some pragmatic things as you think about structuring these programs for true fractional, whether it's VCIO or VCSO. Something I've seen work well is base it off of a monthly retainer that's based on hours, but make it a not to exceed hours. So that way you're not pinning yourself in to say, hey, I have 20 hours I have to burn by the end of the month, right? So, and that way you can kind of oversubscribe your resources slightly by like 120%. So that way when there's lulls or peaks or valleys, you could bring other resources in. Then the second piece of that is having well-defined operational procedures for the way you deliver those services. Having specific reports that you're doing, whether it's monthly performance management, quarterly executive, and biannual ownership or board reports, making sure you're delivering and hitting all of those. And that actually helps you structure your messaging for those different client people within the organization that you're talking to. And so it goes to Alex's point again, being flexible. If you're working at that model, you're getting paid, your resources are getting paid what they should be paid. You're not losing money. It's a profit or a high margin service. Let's put it that way. So that when you need to pivot, your clients your VCSOs or VCIOs can do what's right for the client because they're not overworked, because they're not overburdened.
Yeah. And just to put a pin in this though, let's just say to the average MSP, and I mean that by 60, 70, 75% of MSPs will not have a CIO and a CISO service, right?
That's true.
We're getting into the fringes here. The majority of you are going to struggle just to hire a good CIO to offer a VCIO service or a fractional CIO service. I hate the phrase VCIO, but
so let me nip this in the bud, right? I know Alex and our friend Kyle have done a lot of webinars and a lot of sessions on the differentiators between these VCSO, fractional, whatever. My recommendation for those watching and those listening, head over to Lifecycle Insights. Is that where they're all hosted, right, on YouTube, on Lifecycle's YouTube? Are they on yours? Are they on Kyle's? Are they on both?
They're a little all over the place. I think somewhere Kyle's got a playlist of them. So if you're interested in those, just hit me up on LinkedIn and we'll make sure we get them to you.
So let's get back to our risk conversation, right? Wow, that was quite a tangent for 35 minutes. It's an important conversation, right? So our friend Craig brings up a little interesting comment here, right, about doing risk assessments. They've been doing them for a while, more intrusive. Like, let's talk about the logistics of a risk assessment, right? I know what I do. In fact, I actually take it from a completely different standpoint. And when I'm thinking about conducting a business risk assessment, sure, there's one sliver of that I talk about, cybersecurity, compliance. But when I'm doing a risk assessment, I'm looking at the breadth of the business. I'm looking at, asking 4 or 5 questions in HR, asking 4 or 5 questions in sales and marketing across each of the business units. I'm fleshing out and pinning out areas of improvement, areas of risk, and building out, at least as I'm taking my notes, all right, what am I going to do with this client over the course of the next year? And it's not just 2FA and the security stuff that we talk about, right? It's an overarching piece of their risk.
That's exactly where I was driving, Tim. So like outside of that, cybersecurity journey or destination that you're trying to reach, like Alex said, CIS IG2 or, even a SOC 2 or, CMMC, right? What are those other things that the CIO really can help the business achieve those business goals outside of, and maybe and I think I was bantering a little bit before we started the show, like it's really an opportunity assessment, not necessarily a risk assessment as well. What are the things where they're directly accretive to their business, right? The way they operate, right? The way they communicate internally, what are the tools they use on a daily basis? You mentioned the cash register, like a POS system. Can they do better, right? Can you really become their trusted friend that they're super happy that you're juicing their margins or bettering their business outcome? So,
yeah.
Well, I think a lot of that comes to understanding the business, right? If we get in and understand the business, we can see where efficiencies are lacking. We can see where the CFO spends 20 hours a month in a spreadsheet that should be work that's being done in their ERP solution or in one of their other tools. We can start to identify things like that. If we never dig in at that level, if we never engage at that level, if we just stay really high level saying, yes, they checked all the boxes on the CIS control, then we'll never see that. We'll never know and understand that.
Right.
And that's an important part of it, is getting in the business with your customer, really learning how they operate. And that's why, when I say how they ring the cash register, really what I'm thinking is, what is the process from quote to order to delivery, more so than just the point of sale system. I'm looking at how does money flow through the organization so that we can see and evaluate each and every one of those steps, because I want to find every one of those steps that could go sideways.
Right.
And identify the risk associated with it and figure out where we can streamline it and make it more efficient, but also more resilient.
Exactly.
I think you nail that too, Alex. I mean, there's so many roles that are in big companies that aren't in small businesses. And
right.
Those are all opportunities you can fill. Even just like, I know Tim G has policies like on recommended HR practices and things like that, right? Like those are typically taken care of in a big business. But all these positions, if you think about a big business, how do they add value? Step into those shoes. You got a huge opportunity. So
exactly. And so Emmanuel, hopefully I said that right, asks, what do we do first? Chicken, egg, business impact, risk analysis. How do we where do we go? How do we do this? What do we tell me a process.
Yeah. So now I get to give my favorite MSP answer, which is it depends. So with a prospect, I'm typically doing a really high level look at the business, right? And this is going to be, the most obvious security controls, but also just some basic supportability items, like, is there email where I can support it? Is the firewall a brand that I would understand enough to know if it was even configured securely or properly? Could I monitor it? So at first I'm looking for just, is this client a good fit for me? And if I were to take them on, are they such a dumpster fire that I would need to spend $10,000 fixing it or $200,000 fixing it, right? What's the ramp to supportable look like? Mm-hmm. And from there, we're probably going to build a risk assessment that allows us to, on a semi-regular basis, come back to this client and examine their compliance journey. So whatever framework my MSP tries to align ourselves with, are we marching them forward on their compliance journey? And are they maintaining themselves in a supportable configuration? Am I a Sophos shop that allowed them to keep a Sonic wall because they bought it 2 weeks before they met me with 700 years of support on it, and I'm not willing to go drop a firewall in and just throw it away? Or is this something where, you know, they're already aligned with my best practices, they're using all the tools that I believe they ought to be using, and they're in a place where I can go through and help them be more efficient with those tools because I know and understand them and can support them and secure them, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I think there's two things there. There's, have we done the right thing? And then have, you know, as far as security and compliance goes, and then on the supportability side, like what are we doing to continue to move the needle there? So as much as you'll hear this industry run around and say, pick a framework and align to it, I want to really put my flag in the ground and say, here is the place where thou must also consider supportability. So a proper MSP risk assessment is, are we following the compliance framework, and are we operating in a secure and functional fashion that I can maintain? Because if you're a WatchGuard shop, yes, a WatchGuard can be configured to be CIS compliant, but can I do it? No, because you have a WatchGuard and I've got a ton of experience in Meraki or Sophos or whatever. And so my misconfiguration now leads to your data breach. Think about the position that puts you in.
Yeah. Really good point. I love that. Supportability is key when it comes to, we can identify all of this stuff, but do we have the humans to be able to make sure we're able to support it? Do we have the people in the process to support either our technology or theirs?
Yeah, I think that's so important to consider, and it's something, again, broken record time, but considering your ICP and being selective and narrow in your client focus and in your industries, that's going to help you. And doing technographics as part of your ICP. Do they use, let's say, 365, and they are SonicWall or WatchGuard, having a list of different items, and that's part of your assessment back towards yourself. So I love that, Alex. And then I think for the second part of Emmanuel's question about RTO and business impact analysis, it's not going to be, it doesn't have to be perfect the first time around. I mean, it can be as simple as like I said, identify the crown jewels and have the customer help you. Like we're gonna make it really simple: low, medium, high impact, and just have them answer: is this low impact, medium impact, or is it high impact? And that can always change. But again, getting a baseline to start with, and you start iterating over that. And then as you get to know the client better, you get more enmeshed with their processes, with their people, with their technology. You can adjust those things and change them and become more nuanced. But again, start with a rough draft and iterate over that as you go through the relationship and the life cycle of the client.
Exactly. Oh, wait, did you just say life cycle?
I did. I threw that in there for you.
Mute.
And then when your client tells you that absolutely everything is high impact, then we have not that has ever happened to me.
We're going to have a lot of project work, my friend.
So we're coming up on like the last 15 so minutes here. We always want to try to get into this is great. We recognize that the plane flying over is probably wicked loud for you all. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's wicked loud for me. Sorry, I bantered.
That's the only thing going on in your background we can't hear, so you're good.
Really? Oh, because I'm just like you doing this, right? I need to do like a jig or something. I don't know, or turn it off. So what I wanted to bring up and kind of get into is what we always do is, great. We know we should be doing risk assessments. There's the CIO, FCIO, CLO, that conversation, like we're going to keep that off the table for the moment, but how do we sell this, right? How do we deal with, like, we know we should be doing this. Now, how do we sell this with our existing clients, and then how do we position it with, potential prospects?
I think the good news is every one of your clients watches 60 Minutes or consumes some kind of news. And so cybersecurity has never been more front and center. It's never been an easier conversation. And it's never been being forced on our customers by so many people who are not us in our entire lives, right? The insurance companies talking about it. The downstream contract or the upstream contractors are talking about it to their downstream contractors. There are a lot of reasons that security is going to come into your client's business with or without you. So there's a lot of easy conversations to ask. One of my favorites is, when is your next cybersecurity renewal and how did the last one go? Right? And your cyber insurance renewal. The folks who tell you we don't have cyber insurance and we don't need them, we don't need it, they're probably self-selecting themselves out of your client pool anyway. And now you can go move on and talk to somebody else. But the folks who have actually been through it and done it right are probably going to have a horror story. Cyber liability insurance isn't going well for anybody.
Right.
But it's a great chance to talk about, well, did they ask you for new things this time that they hadn't asked for in the past? Oh, were those already on your roadmap because you had been doing, some strategic planning and road mapping? Because they're not asking for anything that we see as, out in left field. What they're really asking is that you just do the basics. And so, if you're able to have that kind of a conversation, it works out really well. If you know your niche or your industry, and you're in the CMMC field, or the government contracting field, or whatever, those are other places where somebody's already come to them and asked them. You're not going to be the first one to bring this up at this point in the game in July 2023.
Yeah. So what I think I heard you say in that is, we're not alone. Other entities, other organizations, and other stuff is making the case for us. Right now, it's just a matter. Yeah, it's helping. Yeah, I agree. Jesse, what about you? Talk to us a little bit about like your I don't want to say give me your secret sauce on your sales process for doing and conducting risk assessments, but what kind of nuggets could you leave with an MSP that wants to add risk assessments to their MSP and to their organization?
Well, I think there's two things to consider. One is your people need to be competent to deliver it, or you need to find a good partner to do that. And that's a conversation to have. I think if you have a VCIO program, you probably have one or two people that are qualified to learn it. So start training them, number one, and using the CIS. And then number two, I think changing your approach for new clients, as Alex mentioned, I would say work on your marketing to create some sort of a lead magnet that is risk assessment driven, right? So that way that they're coming in you have SQLs, sales qualified leads coming in for risk assessments, and that's specifically what they want. So you're already well qualified, especially if it's in an industry that you have your ICP defined. So you see how those things start to waterfall together, right? And then the second piece is please make your risk assessments actionable. I have so many times that I've seen give a risk assessment and there's just a long list of items that are never going to get done. It's overwhelming to the client and they say, well, I guess that is what it is. And it goes back to that comment we got about, clients never score well. So do a little bit of customized work, right? I think for ICPs, again, for an industry that you're in, certain controls are more important than others. So weight those controls in your risk assessment process. Have high impact controls that score lower if they don't have them, and have things that maybe they don't need but are nice to haves not affect the score as much. And then you'll start to see kind of those peaks and valleys smooth out a little bit, and you'll actually be able to identify a customer that's high risk, medium, and low much more effectively, and convey it in terms that the customer understands and pulls the trigger on, because they're like, yes, this makes sense. You understand my business. So I would say those two things.
And I think to add on to that, if you have a customer who hasn't done anything for compliance yet, don't go give them a risk assessment that's based on CIS IG3 or NIST or a full NIST 800-171. Right. Go do an assessment based on IG1.
Yes.
Right. And go back to that client and explain to them that, hey, they've barely covered the basics. You're not going to show them the 400 other things that you would have marked, incomplete or inept on the risk assessment. But instead, we're going to fix the low-hanging fruit and the high-value items first.
That's right.
And then we will continue to iterate. Because if you overwhelm a customer with 400 red boxes on a risk assessment, then they're going to throw their hands up and go, well, I already lose. There's no way I can do all of this. This is unobtainable. I just can't fix it. And they'll walk away. Yeah. And if you instead go in with small actionable bites, and what I always used to say to my customers was, don't worry, this isn't the worst we've seen. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get out of this overnight, but bear with us. We have a process, and everybody always goes about what is your unique selling process, unique selling proposition. Ours was our process.
Exactly.
We have a process for this. We identify using a risk assessment. We present options to you. We help you budget for those options, and then we remediate. And then guess what? We start over, and we do the same thing over and over. And as you stay with us and work with us through the process, your scores go from really ugly to pretty average to better than average. And then we start to examine more things and show you more places where we can continue to move the needle. If we go just bury our customer in paperwork, they're not going to become our customer in the first place. And if they are our customer, they're going to be really frustrated and be looking to leave.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
One of the things that we did, so during our prospecting conversation, and after the second call, the first call is do we know, like, trust, and is it a good fit? Okay, if it is, let's do a little bit longer, get through that first 15 minutes. Let's do a half an hour to 45 minutes. That second conversation, we had a list of 14 items that had nothing to do with cybersecurity or MDR and DR, all the acronyms. It had to do everything about their business, right? And like, it wasn't like I didn't read word for word. I knew what they were. Our team knew what they were, but we were looking to get those questions answered, right? And it was all about what makes them money, what makes them, run, what is their culture like, who is the, who are the people, and it kind of walked through that story of having them tell us their story, aligning with these 14 questions that we could quickly go through and be like, that area needs work. This is not, oh my gosh, they're doing that. Amazing. Don't have to touch it yet. And identifying, like you said, low, medium, high about their business as a whole. And then we can break those down into the 14 different areas that we could help them. Now, you as an MSP might not have 14 areas that you're able and willing and able to do. So maybe you narrow that down to 3 or 4 areas. Maybe it's a cyber area, a compliance area, an HR area, whatever your little niche is, and then come up with some questions in those niches, right? In those categories.
Yeah, Tim, I think it builds like the fact that you have empathy or you care about their business, right? Like the fact that you understand their business, you're asking those like in-depth questions, right? You're just not offering IT, right? You're trying to understand what makes them excited. If it's a business owner, I mean, obviously you still deal with people that are in the business working for the man, but they still care about, the business flows and how things operate and things like that. So I think it's huge, like right off that bat, getting that, we're on the same team here, we're aligned, like I'm trying to improve the outcomes, which is huge. And then, I think Alex was just talking about CIS and don't overwhelm them with 400 controls. I think the great thing you can tell them is CIS are in priority. So you can start from the top. And by the way, you knock off 1, 2, and 3, like you're doing incredible things for your business, taking risk off the table. So
that's a great point.
So, that's the great thing about CIS framework, as opposed to some of the other ones. They're listed in terms of priority. So you can certainly take a lot of risk off the table.
And just for MSPs who aren't really framework friendly or aren't really framework comfortable at this point in their journey, it's also an easier place to start. It's pretty prescriptive. It's really easier to bite off than some of the larger and some of the more government frameworks like NIST and CMMC, et cetera.
Scary.
So we're coming on the last 7 minutes here. Maybe what I need to do is I need to take my sort of generalized risk assessment and throw that on LinkedIn. I'll do that probably next week. So you have like an actionable item, an Excel. Is that my microphone making all that? Has it been doing it the whole time?
Alex has been giving you hints there. We didn't hear the plane, but we've been hearing that.
Really? Hold on. Is that any better now? Is that any better now?
Yeah. For now.
All right. So, anyways, squeaky. It sounds like the broken shopping cart, right? Sorry about that.
It sounds like you have an old BlackBerry in your pocket and you're like on stage at one of the conferences.
Sorry, I hadn't really Sweet. So
spreading radiation out of your pocket,
So we're coming towards the last 6 minutes here. I'd like every one of us to kind of go around and kind of give us, a minute or two or less or whatever, one nugget for us to like. What's a good action item for the MSPs? Go ahead, Mr. Tim.
Let me get off mute here. I think that action item and like I said, broken record every week, like the more you ask questions, I call it the Q to A ratio, but the more they're talking, the better, right? So you're asking those probing questions every week. They could align with what Tim G was saying in terms of hopefully those questions line up to some kind of item on your risk assessment, but you will never go wrong the more they're talking. Especially about the business, right? They're passionate about it. You just get them bought in, you get them intrigued on the process. So If you don't do that first, do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Not, move down that road, because it's way too mechanical. It's got to be natural. It's got to flow. It's got to, I think I said this last week, that I had an old partner a boss I work for. He's like, understanding the client's problems is your greatest asset.
Yeah.
Right. Because you have opportunities there. So it's an opportunity assessment, not a risk assessment.
Yeah. And as our friend Kyle Christensen pointed out in one of his recent webinars, and tells me all the time, wait. In other words, why am I talking? Right? Wait. And I literally wrote that on a piece of paper and it's sitting in front of my screen. Why am I talking? Right.
There's a funny line of Wolf of Wall Street when he's selling. Not that I want to like pull this in, but Leonardo DiCaprio's like, you just stand there and you sit there and you wait. You wait till someone answers. It can never be you, right? On that phone.
Exactly. So
I prefer the line from Boiler Room where he says, "In every sale is made. It's whether it's them selling you on why you don't, whether it's you selling them on why they need it, or them selling you on why they don't." Yeah. But to wrap up here, my point would be, and I'm going to tell a quick story. 2 weeks ago, I was out in Denver presenting to a group of MSPs. And I had it's either fortune or misfortune of having someone from the organization Gong in the group that I was presenting to. And if you don't know Gong, they're literally a sales organization.
Yeah.
And they have metrics on everything to do with sales. So everything I said, the guy was analyzing everything that I'm saying. And what he came back to me at the end and said was, Gong has a lot of evidence that shows you're more likely to close a deal if you speak 40% of the time and they speak 60. And that's actually the magic split. They said if you only speak 30% of the time, you're not giving them enough information. And if you speak, 80% of the time, they're not getting to build a relationship with you. So 60-40 split is a pretty happy place according to the numbers. But the final thing that I'll say is build your framework, deploy it internally. Tim and I have been having this conversation for at least 2 years now, right? Get your own house in order. Take these steps yourself internally first. You only have to be 1 or 2 controls in the framework ahead of your customers, but do this for yourself internally. But also consider framework plus supportability, because security happens when you're when you're aligning yourself with that framework. And efficiencies and operational gains happen when you're putting yourself in that supportability category, when you're utilizing the tools to the best of your capability, when you're standardizing that tool set, and when you're using automation and efficiency gains in those tools. So that would be my best recommendation to everybody, is take it in-house and don't forget those supportability components.
Awesome. Love that. It's really great. What about you, my friend, Mr. Jesse?
Yeah, I think Alex really hit it on the head with that. And also, operationalize or modularize the way you're delivering things. Have a repeatable sales process. I really think a risk assessment lead magnet, you should start working towards that. Define your ICPs and build your processes around those. Design services that meet those needs, because you're going to be able to scale that much better and much quicker than you would just taking whatever comes across your plate in a kind of ad hoc fashion.
Good stuff. And you know me, I always say start somewhere, do something, just start, right? And that is go to the CI, go to the Center for Internet Security, grab the control framework for CIS1 and look at the first thing that's there and says enterprise assets. Make sure that internally in your own house, you're identifying where all of those assets are. And I don't care if you do it on a piece of paper on your desktop, or if you happen to use Polygon, now that we've automated that, wink, wink, then doesn't matter. As long as you start somewhere, do something, dedicate half an hour a week, an hour a week. You can find an hour a week. I'm going to actually digress here for one split second and kind of give a little anecdote. I know we're at the top of the hour, right? So I was talking to, here, let me do this. So I'm over here because I don't ever put myself front and center. I was talking to a partner not too long ago, and they're kind of going down this rabbit hole, and we're techs, we're geeks, we're like ones and zeros, and we was all about like, well, the tool and the thing, and I can and I was just like, stop. The one thing that you can do as the business owner, as the leader of the organization, is to sit down with your team and give them the opportunity to take 1 hour a week to either document, to take a training course, to do something. When you look at EOS and traction, all these things pressuring down on you, all the way down to your level 1 technician, you need to give them permission. 1 hour a week isn't going to blow you up. Dedicate that first cup of coffee on a Tuesday morning for that first hour. I'm going to document something, or I'm going to learn something. I'm going to separate myself from the daily mundane tasks of running an MSP, and I'm going to build my business, or I'm going to build myself, or I'm going to build my team. Give your team the ability to do that. In fact, I took it a step further and told them, like, we were talking a lot about documentation. We don't have time. We don't have time. And I told them, like, basically what we did was gamify it. Sit down with your staff and say, I have a $100 crisp $100 bill right here in my hand. At the end of the month, the person that's written the most thorough documentation, not baloney, but the most thorough documentation, wins this $100. And then it got, like, you could see it blowing up in teams. It got the, like, banter back and forth. And like, hey, I wrote 2 today. What did you write? Like, you know, being able to incentivize to do that documentation piece, you know, all this is to say, start somewhere, do something, right? And we are 1 minute past the hour. I'm just going to pull this up here on the stream. Next week, we have Matt Solomon. We're going to talk about leveraging reviews and testimonials for your MSP, how to get them, why they're important, building out that social proof. And so join us next week. Do the like and the subscribe. Somebody posted, hey, I can't see this on the Team Tim LinkedIn page. That's because we need to have 150 people follow us according to LinkedIn in order to do that. So please head over to our page, give us the little follow, at least the first 150 of you, so we can start broadcasting this over at Team Tim and separating this out from everything else. So give everybody a chance to say goodbye. I'm Team Tim, Tim Golden from Team Tim, Team Alex, and Jesse, and everybody else. If you want to say something before I end this, we'll end this.
Let's kill it. Happy Friday.
Happy
Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
All right.
Awesome.